There is a common trap that all video editors fall into at one point or another, and today I'm going to explain what that trap is and how you can avoid it. My name is Austen Menges, and I've been a pro editor for over 20 years with a focus on broadcast TV commercials with budgets of $100,000 and higher. And today I'd like to invite you into a conversation. I have a veteran commercial director, former editor, and co-professor with Oscar-winning actor Matthew McConaughey at the University of Texas at Austin. Scott Rice, everybody. So great to have you.
Great to be here, Austin. Thanks.
And today we're going to look at one of our actual projects so we can explain what the trap is and how you can avoid it. And we're going to start by showing a cut of an actual beer commercial that Scott directed and I edited. And I think, Scott, I'm just going to play this version, and I want to see if the audience can identify what trap that I fell into as an editor and Scott. So as you're watching, think about what's wrong with this edit, and then we're going to roast our own work, and we're going to invite you into our creative process, because guess what? We haven't solved the problem yet, so you're just going to kind of watch us try to solve it live. So let's take a look at this cut.
Make every beer a Lone Star.
Okay, Scott, so you had that cut in hand. We thought we were maybe done, and then what happened?
Well, I took this to my class at the University of Texas. It's a commercials class, and I wanted to test out the cut, and I showed it to him, and I was shocked to discover that people did not understand the premise of the commercial. And the premise is that the guy at the bar turns around with the bucket of beer, and it's the wrong beer. It's the wrong brand of beer. It is not Lone Star beer. It literally says not Lone Star. But the audience did not pick up on that. And so our solution today is to figure out how to solve that problem, that the viewer does not notice that a generic beer is in that guy's hands. Therefore, that is the problem of the story of the commercial. And our hero, the armadillo, has to convert that generic beer into Lone Star beer for everyone to be happy.
That's right. So did anyone get that right? If so, leave us a comment or tell us what you thought the problem was, which might be something totally different, a new problem we have to address. And with this setup, I want to say what the trap is that we fall into and what Scott and I fell into here. There's this balance that you have to strike between clarity and cleverness. Always think about clarity over cleverness, because if your film doesn't make sense or a part of it doesn't make sense, you have failed, because you take the audience out of the story. They don't understand what's going on. This is particularly true when you're working on commercials, and I want Scott to talk a little bit more about that. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's particularly difficult on a 15-second commercial, which is what this is. So a lot of people think, oh, the longer your movie is, the harder, more complex. It's kind of the opposite. The shorter something gets, the more important every single second, every single frame is. And every single choice you make, every decision you make about what you include has to contribute to that clarity, also other things like emotion. But today we're talking about clarity. And if it's not there, you got to go in and figure it out. And you don't always get to, if you're making a director's cut, maybe you can add time. But if you're working on the broadcast version, you just have those 15 seconds. That's it. Sometimes it's 6 seconds. Austin and I do 6-second cut down. Some spots are written to be 6 seconds. And you really have to think super hard about what you're going to use. And you can't, shoot, 7 shots and say, well, that's going to tell the story of this 6 second spot. And we need all 7 shots to tell the story in 6 seconds. No, because that's too many shots. It's got to be less. So when you're shooting, you obviously have to think in terms of story economy and clarity. But in the edit, you just can't add more shots to explain, what the spot's about. So it gets really hard, and that's the trick today. I think Austen and I, the trap we fell into is we were trying to combine the ideas of here's this really nice big establishing shot, which you can see here, and the idea of a guy turning from the bar and walking toward his friends with the wrong type of beer. To us, I think that felt more elegant. Let's do both. Let's have the guy turn from the bar. It's a nice shot. It plays on screen for a good amount of time because it's wide. We see the Lone Star logo up in the top left corner of the screen. But we didn't do what we needed to do, was to direct the audience's attention to the fact that he was holding a non-Lone Star beer. So that's what we're trying to figure out how to solve.
That's great, Scott. Talking about the difficulty of making something short, there's a famous philosopher, I think it's Pascal or something. He says famously in a letter to a friend, he says, "Sorry for the long letter. I didn't have time to write you a short one." Kind of meaning it's easy to just, when you have a long thing, you kind of don't have to think about it much. You just do it. When you get in to condensing something and making it clear and making it work and making it short and succinct, there's so much effort involved in that. And that's what happens to us when we're doing a 30 or a 15 or a 6-second commercial. Before we get into some problem solving live, can you please explain quickly, Scott, what the difference is between a broadcast cut and a director's cut for people who don't know?
Sure. So the broadcast version is the one that's actually going to air. It's the one that you make for the ad agency. It's the one that they approve, that they give notes on. And that has a strict time limit because when you buy ad time, it's a spot. That's why we call them spots. It's another word for an ad or commercial. The ad agency buys airtime in 15-second spots, 30-second spots, 60-second spots are typical. You could do a 2-minute spot, but that's rarer. But then when you go back and let's say the editor and the director want to make their own version for their own reels, just internally, to try to get other jobs, you can play with the time. You can add time. You can subtract time. Sometimes Austen and I will make a 30-second spot for broadcast, but then the director's cut will actually be shorter because we think it's better, tighter. And the reel, an overall reel, plays faster when the director's cut is shorter. That's kind of rare. People talk about the director wanting to indulge and use all the shots that they shot and make the story even longer. But Austin and I kind of feel the opposite. The shorter is actually better when it comes to commercials. So our director's cuts tend to be shorter. In this case, though, when you have a 15-second spot, gosh, it could behoove us to make it a little longer. So that is an option for us. We do want to make this into a director's cut. So we do have the option as you come up with solutions yourself for this particular spot. Have that in your mind that we can add time a little bit.
Yes. So now, Scott, this is real time. So Scott and I haven't discussed this. We had the idea for this, but we actually have to solve this because we want to finish our director's cut. And then we had the test screening, so we got feedback. And so now what we're doing, we went back, I found a couple old cuts, because one thing Scott and I like to do, we use Frame.io, so we post edits as we go. So there might be 30 different versions in our Lone Star folder on Frame.io. And so I kind of went and dug back and pulled out a couple of old versions to kind of get a glimpse of maybe some other shots we could use. Or one great thing is to just see what my first instinct was. So Scott, I thought we would show, I have cut 23, so I thought we would just watch it and kind of react live. And our goal is to come up with a better balance of clarity in the spot, while hopefully still maintaining some of those elegant choices we made and liked. So let's take a look at this together and talk about it. This is an old cut, number 23. So this won't have color correction or sound design. It's a true rough cut. And then we might even show one even further back next. So let's take a look.
Make every beer a Lone Star.
Okay, Scott. So I'm going to pause on this shot here. So we cut into this nice medium shot. So that does get toward a solution because I am a little closer. It's a little more cutty. It's not quite as elegant, but I am at least able to read it much more clearly, especially if you compare it to this wide shot up here. What did you think when you watched that?
Yeah, my initial response is that it helps. It helps.
Yeah, it does.
I feel like the shot is too short. So we cut into the medium, we're closer, but we don't have a moment to sit there and register the not Lone Star is a problem. I feel like the character has to look down, there needs to be a performance moment. We maybe hear the off-screen ick, from his friends. Yep. Maybe it's a record scratch, to really draw our attention to, because we're still in a medium shot. So our inclination is to look at the person and not necessarily the prop that he has in his hands. So if he glanced down because someone said ick, or there's a record scratch in the music and then he looked down, I feel like you start to recognize, oh, okay, this is a beer commercial for Lone Star. What I see there is just a white label that says not Lone Star. I'm still not sure the audience reads it in the medium shot. They may not bother to read it. They may just kind of see the white generic labels. So that's kind of my first impression, that it's a step in the right direction, but it's not a 100% solve yet at this point.
Yeah, I had the same thought, Scott, as on this shot in particular. It's a little bit of there's two things going on, right? Because I'm drawn to the actor's face and performance in this framing. So my eye, it's just not drawing me to the not Lone Star. It's better because the punch-in kind of tells my eye where to go, but really in the wide, if we're talking about eye trace, I'm looking at the actor's smile. So then that draws my eye to his face in this medium shot. So I'm sort of just thinking that the beers he's holding is kind of this afterthought. So your idea, Scott, is smart, or both of your ideas are really good, which is if we're looking at this actor's face, if we have a take where then he looks down at the beer, then my eyes go down to what he's looking at. So that would draw my eye to it. And then a huge thing you brought up, which is often a fix when we work together, is using some sort of sound design element to draw attention. And a record scratch really says, like, it says something's wrong. And if we put the something's wrong sound over the something's wrong shot, that could really be an interesting fix. So I dug up the very first thing I posted, and this will serve multiple purposes, because I often talk about getting your rough cut out there, or rough assembly. So this would be an internal cut. So this is the first thing I posted to Frame.io to show Scott, and it's extremely rough. So you'll see a huge difference from the first thing we showed you. It was a very tight edit. It had final color, final sound mix, very refined final graphics. So this should be a stark contrast, so I'll be vulnerable here, but it's one that I pulled for that very reason, because we just show, no shame, show a close-up of the Lone Star. Maybe I'll just show you, Scott, and you can tell me what you think. So No more setup, let's see. So Lone Star 9.
Make every beer a Lone Star.
Complete with my temp voiceover, which is also a common theme in an extreme rough cut. So,
Well, that's awesome. I actually,
that is
despite
interesting.
how rough it is, there's some great stuff in there.
What was your gut instinct when you watched this?
I had forgotten that we had that in-camera kind of slow zoom. I remembered that we shot a close-up of the not Lone Star, but I forgot that we actually did an in-camera zoom in on it, which is really kind of fun and goofy. It works for the tone. It works for the comedy. I think we could repo it a little bit. Like if we use this particular shot, we could repo it so it doesn't feel cut off at the top. But it forces you to read it. I think it is important that you read it, not Lone Star. You know, the art department made a decision that it would say not Lone Star. I think it's important that you read that it is not the beer it's supposed to be. So I do like the idea of, you know, we can experiment with this, but it could potentially, you know, it might be too much to go from the wide, cut to the medium, zoom into the tight. Maybe that's too much. Again, maybe that's inelegant. Maybe it just feels too cutty or, you know, too many steps. We could go, well, we could kill our baby and kill the wide shot, which I don't want to do because I love the wide shot. It establishes the space. I really like it. I'd rather not do that, but we could do it and just go to the medium and then zoom into the not Lone Star label. Or we could establish the space, have the wide shot, and then instead of holding on the medium and the guy reacting, we cut to the very beginning of the medium shot, right at the beginning of the zoom in. So it kind of feels like the crash zoom. We crash zoom almost from the wide. That'll be the impression to the label itself, which that actually might work. And we can clean it up. We can speed ramp the zoom. We could repo the shot. Maybe there's another shot that's a little cleaner. And then we go to the people reacting and then whip pan to the armadillo. I did also feel like we could cut the reaction shot of the people, which actually this cut does. That's very interesting. This cut does not show his friends reacting in disgust. It goes right to the solution, which maybe is a better idea. Maybe we just let sound design, the record scratch, and the people giving their ick reaction off screen. Maybe that says it all. And then we do see
exactly
them
what I
reacting
was
at the
thinking.
end and cheering. That could be, and then that would take away, you know, we're trying to get rid of that clunkiness or that lack of elegance. Sometimes just cutting a shot is the key to tightening it up and strengthening that clarity. So that could be an option. That, you know, it's really ironic that your very first assembly or the very first thing you showed me had the solution all along. But then we kind of forgot about it and missed it and went off on all these tangents.
Summarize for the audience. Well, one, if you like those ideas, comment below. Or if you have a different idea, tell us in the comments and maybe we'll pick you, because Scott and I are literally going to go work on this. And we'll do a follow-up episode where we come to our conclusion of kind of fixing this director's cut. And I hope this was interesting to you. This is really how Scott and I work together. We're trading cuts back and forth. I'm getting his notes. I'm presenting other ideas. We're going back to our first instincts. We're getting feedback from a real audience. And we're making tweaks until we come to something that has a nice balance. But always, what we want in our commercials and everything we make, films, whether it's a music video, it's a short film, it's a narrative feature script, always strive for clarity, because there's nothing that will lose your audience more than if they're confused. Scott, thank you for coming on here and having this sort of live brainstorm that we will actually take and use to polish up this edit. I'm putting Scott's social links below. Go give him a follow, support him. He has an awesome Instagram following, and he's going to be posting a lot more on YouTube. And then if you guys liked content like this, you should check out my free editing guide, which you can download at the link in the description. And if you want to go even deeper than that, I have a whole module on feedback, my feedback process for commercials in my editing course, which you can check out at the links below also. And if you like this video, you should watch this one next. Happy editing.